Hello friends, I made a video the other day that was kind of an introduction to the Gibson Firebird, and I wanted to begin to show you some of the evolution of how the Gibson Firebird came about. The more I thought about it, the more it dawned on me that the Firebird is a perfect way to tell the tale of two rival American guitar building companies, the Gibson Company and the Fender Company. The Firebird is a perfect example of how that little arms race culminated in the mid-60s. And I would like to go back in time a little bit and fill in the gaps and show you kind of how that story came about by sharing some examples with you. Some of these will be period correct and some of them are more just approximations to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So let's go all the way back to the beginning of the Gibson Corporation. Orville Gibson, kind of a madman from upstate New York, moves out to Michigan with an idea of how to build a new mandolin. And he gets some investors who are interested in his design. They basically buy his approach for a round back and a round top mandolin, much like this one. This is a 1920 Gibson Model A. So what you'll see is it has this beautiful rounded back and a rounded top. Unlike the mandolins that were being built in Europe that had a big bold back, he had this idea of more of a carved top and a carved back that gave more volume, more definition, more bass, and the Gibson Company was born. They made some flat top guitars that kind of echoed this with the round holes. Some of the, you see the pictures of Robert Johnson with his old Style O. So thus Gibson began. So pretty quickly, the guys from Kalamazoo, Michigan realized that Orville Gibson was a little special. And so they kind of dismissed him from the company, but carried on with the Gibson name and became really the forerunners and like the most important builders in the world of carved jazz guitars, and then also helped introduce, along with Martin guitars, the flat top acoustic guitar. And so all throughout the 20s, 30s, and 40s, they were probably the finest instruments you could buy in the world. And they didn't have a lot of competition. They were very old world craftsmanship, very, glued in set necks, carved tops, very traditional finishes, sunbursts or blonde, occasionally black, but very traditional in their approach to how to make a guitar. So, as we get out of World War II at the end of the 40s, there's a ham operator builder named Leo Fender who, along with his partner Doc Kaufman, start capitalizing on the Hawaiian music boom that was happening in America, and they start making some lap steels and little amplifiers, and thus K&F, which then becomes Fender, is born. Now Leo couldn't play a note, but he was a brilliant tinkerer, and he was talking to musicians around him, a lot of folks involved in like the California Western swing thing, like Jimmy Bryant, and he said like, hey, why do we, if we've got electronics now and amplifiers, why do we still have to build these big hollow guitars that are prone to feedback when we put a pickup in them? Because other companies had been attempting, Gibson included, placing an electronic pickup in these big hollow guitars to some success, but what they're finding is that there were issues with feedback and noise. And so Leo had this idea of, why not scrap the entire idea of this old craftsman idea of how to build a guitar and be the Henry Ford of electric guitars. I'll build a slab of wood, simple routing. I'll bolt a neck on, so if you have any issues with the neck, take the neck off and toss it away and put in another one. And I'll mount the pickups directly into the guitar. So in 1948, Fender introduced what was first called the Broadcaster, then shortly for a little while had no name, so they're affectionately known as a no-caster. And then by 52, we see the birth of the Telecaster. And it made a sound that no electric guitar had made to that point, or no guitar at all had made to that point. It was a revolutionary instrument and continues to be one of the most popular guitars made and copied. So, not resting on his laurels, Leo was looking at other issues going on with bands. Meanwhile, tinkering and fine-tuning his amplifiers. I think that the Tweed amplifiers that Leo designed in the 50s are potentially some of the best amps ever made. But one of the problems he saw with modern music is that the upright bass players of the day, doom, 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 not only having to lug around a huge instrument, they were an unfretted instrument, which led to intonation issues. You were as good as your bass player's ear and skills because notes could just be out of tune on a fretless bass. So Leo, being Leo, decided, what if I take the same kind of idea that I had for this Telecaster, I'll bolt on a neck and I'll put it on a slab body, but I'll make a fretted electric bass that'll be precise, because now every note will be in tune, and thus the Fender Precision is born in 1950. And it's still the gold standard for electric basses. It's been tinkered with and copied and improved upon marginally, but still I would say the Fender bass is probably, the Fender Precision bass is the gold standard for what an electric bass can and should be. Brilliant. So, once again, not resting on his laurels, Leo goes back to the musicians that he knows around Fender and says, what can I do better? And some guy said, hey man, that Telecaster body kind of dug into my ribs a little bit. I wish it had a few more sounds. I wish it was a little more balanced. So he goes back to the drawing board and he comes back with his third invention. This is a guy who couldn't play a note. First thing he does, Telecaster. Second thing he does, precision bass. Third thing he does, this. It's the Fender Stratocaster, which is kind of a perfect guitar. He comes up with a brilliant new floating tremolo system that improves upon the Bigsby design significantly as far as workability and intonation. He puts 3 pickups in it, so with a 5, well, early on, just a 3-way switch. But for more tonal variation, he invents this brilliant kind of string tree concept that keeps the strings in spacing better. And it's just a brilliant design that really revolutionized and, leads to folks like Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton and, all kinds of great, Stevie Ray Vaughan, obviously. But 3 pretty significant inventions in a row from old Leo Fender. The other thing that he did that none of these really show is that around the early 60s, because the early Fenders were staying pretty traditional in their finishes as well. There was that blonde Telecaster. There's, the original Stratocasters came out in a sunburst. But by the early 60s, taking a cue from Southern California hot rod culture, Fenders start to get wild, because not only do they have these cool swooping curves that kind of echo the hot rods of the day, they go straight to DuPont and they start getting auto colors. So now they've got Dakota Red, they've got Shoreline Gold, they've got, I can't remember the name of the blue. Forgive me, I'm forgetting the cool names of the Fender colors, but reds and blues and golds and whites and blacks, and it takes the electric guitar into as we're entering the 60s, it's really echoing the popular culture of the day, and now these things are really ready for the modern space age. So, Fender has made its big splash. Gibson, more cautious, more conservative, and a more established company, at first are saying, it's a fad, nobody's gonna want these solid body guitars, these will come and go, we'll stay the course and we'll build our traditional guitars. But as the Telecaster is starting to succeed, they're seeing the pressure to at least dip their toe in the idea of a solid body guitar. So they in conjunction with one of the most famous guitarists of the day, Les Paul, Les Paul has this idea of building a solid body guitar. So in 1952, Gibson create their Les Paul guitar. It's a solid piece of mahogany with a maple top. This one would have had this long trapeze tailpiece that was on the very first year. This is a first year. It's in 1952. 6 on the side headstock, and this this predates rock and roll. This was a big step for them in entering the solid body market, but still staying traditional, staying gold. They only made gold and black. So they weren't quite going to get suckered into this arms race of the futuristic stuff quite yet. The Gibson, this comes out in 52 and is made all the way throughout the 50s until it ends in 1960, which is another story. But by the late 50s, Gibson kind of sees the writing on the wall that things, there's satellites in space. We're in an arms race with the Soviets. Perhaps it's time to kind of step up their game and make something a little more futuristic. So in 58, Ted McCarty designs 3 crazy new guitars: the Flying V, the Modern, which actually never really went into production, and this crazy beast, which is called the Gibson Explorer. The original ones would have been made out of a blonde wood that they called, come on brain, I know, it's called, well, I'll remember in a moment. Uh-oh, my battery's getting low. Close that up. I'll have to clean up that as an edit. So here we are, the Gibson Explorer. It didn't really take off very well. It was a novelty piece for the NAMM show that year, but they only sold somewhere between 50 and 65 of these total in 58. and they just kind of put this design away, and it didn't come back for many years as a reissue. But still a very cool and very futuristic guitar for 1958. So now it's the early 60s. Fender are selling custom color, crazy looking guitars that look like hot rods, and they're selling. People are excited about them. Surf has come in, which has brought in this new color, and California is all in fashion. Gibson take the bait. They decide, we're gonna try and take Fender head on with his solid body, colorful, cool guitars. So in '63, they put out the first version of the Firebird. And this is that original design. They did a couple different versions, the 1, 3, the 5, and the 7, that had different pickup configurations and different inlays and kind of appointments, going from the simplest to the most ornate. But a kind of cool, crazy tremolo system, a very unique pickup that is a Firebird pickup that really wasn't used in many other guitars at all. That had a really unique sound. These didn't last very long. They were made, this design, from '63 to '65. Some of the later ones actually did have P90s in them. If you ever have one of those and want to give it to me, I will gladly take it. But this design was picked up by certain players. You see Brian Jones and Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones had them early on. Johnny Winter, the Texas blues legend, famously played a Firebird for years. But so after only 2 years of production, and this odd, you can see it was all one piece. The neck came all the way through the body, and these were just kind of glued on wings that made this unique instrument. After just 2 years of doing this design, they switched to what they call the non-reverse Firebird, which looks a little bit more like this. Kind of reminds me of, it's kind of a Firebird flips upside down. But these ones had P90 pickups in them. Some of them actually did have a mini humbucker in them as well. A little bit of a different design. This is a one-piece body with a bolted-on neck. Different headstock shape. They got in a little bit of trouble with Fender because it is quite similar to a Fender headstock if you think about it. And these guitars do kind of split the difference between a Gibson and Fender. They've got a little bit more of that Fender jangle, but still having a little bit more of the Gibson muscle. This is a rare finish called Inverness Green, which is named after the town in Scotland where golf was invented. But yeah, and this has been my main axe for a little while. And this guitar they continued to make the non-reverse from about 65 to I think about 69 before it was done away with. And now Gibson is smart enough with their custom shop to reissue both styles of Firebirds, and they're out there and available. Not inexpensive, but cool, unique guitars that kind of get overlooked in the world of Gibson. All this is basically a long ad for my new record, which is called Phil Hurley, The Firebird Sessions, which I played this green Firebird on most of it. It is available now on all your streaming platforms, Apple, Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. But I hope this filled in a little bit of gaps for your education of electric guitars and the building thereof. And thanks for watching.